I've been struggling to make ends meet lately. My day job is with a small company still finding its footing in a competitive field. I was due a raise, but that disappeared like a whisper in the wind. When we lost out on a massive account last week, an account that would have made us a significant player in the field. After the loss, the company instituted an immediate pay freeze. Let's just say I wasn't surprised at the timing. Worse, my actor, waiter roommate decided they could no longer afford to live in Los Angeles. They finally did what they long promised they'd never do, move back home, with no immediate people to replace them, and rent due at the end of the month. I was stuck paying the entire bill. They apologized and shed tears, but had no extra cash to help. 10 hours later, they were a ghost. While I stared blankly at the now empty bedroom, a horrid thought crossed my mind. I was going to have to find a new roommate, and soon. The idea of going through the arduous process of finding someone to live with made me feel physically ill. Half the people who applied were psychotic strivers hell-bent on world domination, or, failing that, control of the shared TV. The others were so festooned with red flags, they looked like a walking bag of blood. King Arthur had an easier time pulling Excalibur from the stone than I did finding a non-psycho roommate in a city determined to keep cranking out and attracting weirdos. As a result of my money crunch, I turned to Tasker. Tasker is an app where people hire you to do odd jobs for cash. The number of shelves I've installed for people is in the hundreds. I've also walked dogs, cut grass, pulled up garbage cans, and cleaned out garages. Each time I clicked on the little T logo on my phone, I aided the never-ending battle with my landlord. While the Tasker jobs helped close the gap, I was still short. The first of the month was fast approaching, and it gave me hives. I sold DVDs and Blu-rays. I sold blood and plasma. I inquired about selling sperm, but was told, thanks but no thanks, which wounded my pride more than I thought it would. I started daydreaming about bank security systems, and wondering if I could get away with a robbery if I really had to. But my dreams of larceny would soon take a backseat when I heard the melodic chime from the Tasker app. It had recommended a job I might be interested in. I wasn't going to respond right away, but my curiosity got the best of me. My jaw dropped. It was a house-sitting job in Beverly Hills, and the pay was more than I'd earn on my regular paychecks. The amount of money could not only seal the gap, but it would buy me time to find a decent roommate. Suddenly, the day looked brighter. I had to win over the homeowner first. Her name was Marcia, and before she agreed to give me access to her multi-million-dollar property, we'd have to meet in person. If we hit it off, my rent was as good as paid. Marcia was in her late 60s and had allowed herself to age gracefully, unlike the rest of Southern California. The corners of her radiant, almost hypnotic, blue eyes crinkled when she smiled. Her hair had been a starless sky black in her younger days, but was now streaked with white comets. Though age had stooped her shoulders some, she held her head gracefully high as she whisked me into each room of her mansion. Every time she presented a room, it was as if she was reading a museum exhibit plaque. She was quick with a joke, and her calm, soothing voice made me feel like I'd known her for years. Marcia impressed me, so did the house. She told me that this whole area was originally a rancho occupied by the Quia family. The Quias had owned and worked the land for decades. Their hard work paid off, and they became quite wealthy. Then, the Mexican-American War broke out. Before the ink dried on the unfair Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo, white settlers started crossing the continent. According to Marcia, the Quia's claim to their ranch was not honored by the United States, and they were violently forced off their land. They did not go quietly. Blood was spilled by both sides, but, in the end, the surviving Quia family fled. Nobody knows precisely what happened to them, but legends persist. Some say they left for the protective bosom of Mexico City. Others say they moved north and changed their names. The most disturbing of the tales was that the family was ambushed during the night and murdered in their home. The bodies were torn apart and scattered across the land. Regardless, their removal was not pleasant, except for the main house, which still stood like a crypt in the backyard. The entire Quia ranch was torn down. Overnight, the family had been stripped of their humanity. If the harsher stories are to be believed, their lives. After hundreds of years of ownership, all that remained of the Quia family was the small River Rock house, and rumors of their demise That's horrific, I said when Marcia pointed out the house from the back patio. It was. Those poor creatures, she said wistfully. Have any survivors ever contacted you or asked for compensation? Heavens no. Even if they did, the house and land have been partitioned and sold dozens of times. They'd have no recourse. I suppose so, I said. But I'm not a monster. I've kept the house standing. I feel like they're still here as long as that house still stands. A testament to the tenacity of the Mexicans, Marcia added in that boomer way of both complimenting and insulting a person's race. Marcia escorted me into the dining room, where an impressive display of treats was laid out. She talked about the other people that had owned the house, while she served me finger sandwiches and freshly made lemonade. Finally, she got to the crux of the matter. She needed to go back east to see her ailing mother, and needed someone to stay at the house for the week. I could stay in the guest room on the main floor, and had free run of the house except for one area, the Kuya house. It's not a guest house, I asked. No, it's more of a relic than dwelling at this point. That's the reason I don't like people going in there. I get it, I said. It's nothing personal, dear, Marcia said. Even I don't go in there. I'm so afraid it'll collapse if anyone even breathes too hard near it. Not up to code. I joked. Not in the least, she said. Have you ever been in there? Once, a long time ago. Too depressing for my liking. Why not knock it down? Marcia must not have heard me because she turned to me with a grin and asked, Is the pay acceptable for you, John? I wasn't sure if it was enough. It's great, actually. Thank you, I said. Do you need me to do any other little things around here? I hang a mean shelf. Oh no, just keep an eye on the place, collect the mail, and enjoy yourself. My nephew installed some sort of internet show thing last time he was over. Feel free to watch whatever on there. I never bother. Thank you, I said. My pleasure, she said with a warm smile. She reminded me of my grandma. I have a good feeling about you. I think you're perfect for the job. I felt myself blush and was unsure why. You're nice to say so. I hope I live up to the house's grandeur, I said. I'm sure you will, she said warmly. She handed me her spare keys. If you're taking any trips in the future and need someone to watch the place, I'll be happy to do it. Just text me and don't even bother with the app. You're sweet. I don't leave often, and I fear the next time will not be under the best circumstances. She leaned in and whispered, My mother is very ill. Sorry to hear that, I said solemnly. Marcia shrugged her shoulders. C'est la vie. The next day, Marcia caught a flight out of LAX, and I moved into the spare bedroom. This room was nearly as big as my apartment, and I could feel jealousy tickle up my spine. I unpacked my meager belongings and decided to give the house a once-over. Marcia had already given me a tour, but it's always different when you have free reign of a strange place. I wasn't planning on snooping, but I did want to get a lay of the land. Marcia didn't have any security system. I found that odd at first, as there were valuables everywhere, but it made sense after getting to know her style. She was old-fashioned and proper, and I wasn't sure if modern security cameras would blend with her decor. But even if thieves broke into the house, I don't think they'd know where to look. The house was reminiscent of the Los Angeles sprawl. It just kept going. I sighed. One old lady lived in a place that could easily hold a dozen or so. Didn't seem fair that I had to struggle for a bedroom when Marcia had several she used for storage. After the stroll, I decided to take in the grounds out back. There was an ornate swimming pool with a mosaic tile picture of Botticelli's Birth of Venus on the bottom. Beyond the pool was a beautiful English-style garden overstuffed with local vegetation. The sheer number of bees pollinating to and fro gave the area steady buzzing noise. Blossoming cherry trees shaded the dirt path I walked down. They ran along an artificial stream that carried fallen flowers to a drain at the end of the property line. The sun sparkled off the ripening red fruit. In short, everything back here was beautiful. Everything except the Kuya house. It sat in a small courtyard just off the back patio. It was surrounded by ancient oaks that cast long shadows over it. Every room on the back side of the house had a door to the patio. From where I was staying, I'd be no more than 20 feet from the structure. I felt myself shudder at that realization, though I didn't know why. The house wasn't ugly. In fact, in any other location, and with a realtor's panache, it would be described as cozy and sell above market value. But there was a heavy atmosphere around it. You could feel it in your bones. It was like a storm that was about to drop down enough water to sweep you away. The outside was made of dense river rock and dark timber. There were no windows, at least not anymore. They had been bricked up by previous owners. The door looked like something from an old Scottish castle, not a Mexican ranch house. Knowing Marsha's wealth and taste, I thought there was a chance the door might actually have hailed from the Highlands. I walked around the outside of the house, but I kept my distance. The foreboding made me cautious. I didn't think it was haunted. Ghosts aren't real, but Marsha had suggested that the Quills may have been murdered here. That carried weight with me. The house didn't pass a vibe check, and I decided to leave the relic alone and not come back. No need to stir up bad juju if I didn't need to. I was content to stay within the confines of the big house and waste the week. Sometime after dark, I heard a woman scream in the backyard. Without security cameras to check it out, I went to the window in my room and peeked through the blinds. The backyard was dark, doubly so because of the large shade trees. Save for a line of small solar path lights, the backyard looked like a bottle of ink. I wanted to pretend I hadn't heard it, but my conscience wouldn't let me ignore that yell. I was gonna have to go outside. I'm no shrinking violet. I'm a big guy, and I've been in quite a few scraps in my time. I've also taken Taekwondo for 5 years, so I know a thing or two about disarming a person. I felt confident that I'd be okay if someone was out there. I prayed that wasn't the case, but mentally prepared myself to brawl. I opened the door in my room that led to the backyard. As soon as the door swung open, you could feel the summer night heat cling to you. The sounds of nature intermingled with the surrounding city, creating a constant buzz of activity. And Jesus tap dancing Christ. Was it dark? The moon was covered by clouds, and it was hard to see a few feet in front of you. Even with my phone's flashlight, it was impossible to see much. I moved slowly down the path and scanned the phone from right to left, and then back again. I figured I'd walk down to the back fence and back. The screaming sounded like it had come from that direction. If someone was out there, attacker or victim, I wagered I'd find them near the path. "Hello," I said, pushing as much bass into my voice as possible. "Do you need help?" There was no immediate response. I repeated my question a few more times, but got the same result. I was starting to wonder if the yell had come from a passing car or a neighbor when I heard someone shuffling on the other side of the line of cherry trees. I stopped and turned my phone towards the noise. "Hello, hola," I heard a woman say back in a soft, scared voice. "Hola, necesita ayuda?" I asked, not sure if my high school Spanish held up. There was no response. "Hola," I said again. "Hola," the soft voice said again. "Eres tu quien gritaba?" She never answered my question about the screaming. After a few seconds, the voice said in a whisper, "Deberias irte aquí." This time I caught a glimpse of a woman in a white and yellow dress running through the trees. I veered off the path and headed toward where I saw the woman. I assumed I'd be running into someone hiding in the shadows, but after a few minutes of searching, I didn't find a soul. I was stumped. "Why did you tell me to leave?" I asked the air around me. I felt the stinging in my back before I heard the thump against my spine. "What the hell?" I said, stumbling forward a few steps. I caught my balance before I fell and quickly snapped around, ready to Jackie Chan some fool. But there wasn't anyone standing there. I rubbed my back where I had been hit and winced in pain. There was a welt, and I knew it was already bruising. I pointed my phone at the ground and saw a smooth round rock at my feet. I picked it up and felt the weight. It was hefty. I wondered where it came from when I was nearly blinded by a beam of light that flashed into my eyes. "Hey, what's going on?" asked a gruff male voice. "Can you get the light out of my eyes? Tell me, who are you first?" "I'm the house sitter. Marsha's gone. Her mom's sick. Call her to confirm if you want," I said. "Now, before I get permanent damage to my eyes, can you please move the lid?" The light went down to my chest. I blinked but could still see the bright beam in my vision. It'd be a bit before everything went back to normal. "How do you know her?" the man asked. "I don't, really. I was hired by a company." "Who are you?" "Her neighbor," he said. From behind him, I could hear his wife tell him not to tell me his name. "Okay, neighbor, can I help you?" We heard screaming. "Was that you? Are you serious?" "Well, do you know who it was?" "No, I came out here to check, too. I didn't find anyone. Every day, this place gets more like Van Nuys. I swear to God," the guy said. "I live in Van Nuys," I responded. "Well, there are some nice parts, I'm sure. "Do you have security cameras?" Again, his wife chimed in and told him to not tell me anything. I rolled my eyes. "I'm not going to rob you, for God's sake. I'm curious because I heard a woman speaking Spanish back here, wondering if she was cutting through yards. I don't think you're going to rob us." "Great," I said. "Did you happen to see a Hispanic woman cross through your yard?" "Not since our housekeeper left," he said, laughing. I didn't join in. He stopped the chuckle. "If you could check your tapes, I'd appreciate it. There's no one back here now, but I want to make sure she's not in trouble or anything. If I see anything, I'll let you know. Thanks. Sorry about the light in your eyes," the neighbor said. His wife berated him for showing weakness. I could feel her eye rolls like they were Southern California tremors. "I'll be here all week. If you hear a dude back here, it's me." "Sounds good. Have a good night," he said before disappearing back behind the fence. I heard his wife's angry whispering and I laughed. I looked down at the rock in my hand and it clicked. This looked like river rock, just like the queer house. I looked up and sure enough, the house was within my line of sight. Despite the heat, I shivered. I pocketed the rock and headed back inside. My nerves were as jangly as a puppet in the hands of a novice puppeteer. I checked my back and saw a raised welt. Whoever had chucked that rock had done a masterful job. I wasn't sure who had thrown it or where they had gone, but I worried they might return. I suddenly felt the lack of any security system at this place. I decided to do hourly checks of the property and ensure I was still alone. Each time I patrolled, I followed the same route. I walked through the upstairs rooms, the downstairs rooms, and the front yard. I finished my journey in the backyard. I avoided getting too close to the queer house on every trip. I walked around it but kept my distance. I did the checks 3 times, and nothing was amiss. After the last time, I felt myself relax. I was sure that whoever had been out there wasn't there anymore. I needed to calm down. The best way to do it was with an edible. I settled into the theater room, turned on a mindless action movie, and passed out. Around 3 in the morning, I heard the door to the theater room swing open. It snapped me from my THC-assisted sleep. I wanted to keep the element of surprise on my side, so I didn't move. At first, I wasn't sure someone was even in there, but then I heard the floorboards behind me squeak. The hairs on my neck stood on end. Someone was here. I balled my hands into fists. I planned to wait until the person was directly behind me and swing on them. I heard a footstep behind me, and I knew it was time. I popped up like a coiled spring and spun to deliver the haymaker, but before I even turned around, the person ran out of the room and slammed the door behind them as they did. I jumped up and followed after. I heard my room's door slam closed and assumed the stranger was running through my room to the patio. I got to my door and ripped it open to find my back door was swinging open. I dashed through the room and stepped into the backyard. It was pitch black outside. The solar lamps that lit the walkway had powered down, and the moon was covered by rolling clouds. I had left my phone in the theater room, so I didn't even have the weak bulb to help guide me. I ducked behind one of the cherry trees and let my eyes adjust as best they could to the darkness. Even when they did adjust, it was nearly impossible to see anything. I assumed we both were at the same disadvantage. I peered around the tree trunk, hoping to catch some movement in the dark. I had no real belief I'd be able to see anything, but I prayed I'd be able to track them by sound. If they moved near me, I could run towards the noise. A wind started blowing, shaking the trees. It made it harder to pinpoint any movement. If you were gonna run, the swelling of noise was the perfect time to do so. The other person must have agreed because they took off running for the back fence. I didn't hear it at first, but then the rhythmic pounding of footfalls cut through the shaking leaves. I dashed out from behind the tree and made for the fence myself. As I was sprinting after the intruder, a pale figure emerged from between 2 trees to my left and let out a blood-curdling scream. It sounded like the same scream from earlier. I was so caught off guard that I tripped over my feet and crashed to the ground. I thumped my head on the tile pretty hard and instantly felt the trickle of blood on my forehead. When I sat up, I was dizzy. I looked over where the screaming had come from and saw nothing. I tried to stand, but my wobbly legs made that difficult. As soon as I finally got upright, I heard someone at the fence. I saw the neighbor's motion light click on and knew they were climbing over. I felt a lump in my pocket and remembered I had the rock from earlier. In desperation, I pulled it out and threw it at the back fence. Maybe I'd get lucky. and pegged the person as they scrambled over the fence. I did, and the rock slammed into the fence with an echoing thud. I stood there, trying to catch my breath, and feeling pain ripple through my body. What the hell had just happened? I was trying to process what was happening when I heard someone walking behind me. I turned around and saw another figure holding the flickering flame walking near the queer house. I wanted to run over to them, but was transfixed with the light like a moth. It never even came into my mind who was holding the flame. As the light moved to the side of the house, I heard the candle holder yell, "Morir Zacqui," before the light went out. I had retained enough Spanish to understand what the figure had just said. "You will die here." I stumbled over to where the figure had walked to, but like every other time, there wasn't anyone there. It became clear at this moment that maybe I wasn't dealing with thieves. Perhaps this was something altogether unnatural. I wanted to say ghosts, but my rational brain couldn't cross that Rubicon. Then again, my rational brain also couldn't explain what the hell just happened to me either. I thought about calling Marcia, but realized how late it was on the East Coast. She was probably dead tired from the travel. I'd do it first thing in the morning. I went back inside and checked on my head. I had a little gash over my eyebrow, but it had clotted. I cleaned it up and put on a butterfly stitch for good measure. Afterward, I went to every door and window and locked them shut. I did a little mental account of who might be outside. There was the woman in the white and yellow dress, the figure that screamed like a woman, and the candle guy. Of the three, the woman in the dress didn't harm me, at least not yet. Anyway, realizing I wasn't going to solve any of this, and feeling confident that I was safe inside, I finally settled into bed. I was still terrified, but the adrenaline that had sustained me was gone. I felt my eyelids get heavy. I let the dark surround me and I passed out. It was the chirping birds that woke me up. They were so loud, it sounded like they were inside the room with me. I yawned, stretched, and rubbed the sleep from my eyes. My head was pounding from last night's fall. I opened my eyes, and my blood ran cold. The window and back door in my room were wide open. I jumped out of bed and backed out of my room into the hallway. That's when I noticed that every window and door in the entire house was open. "What the hell?" I muttered before stepping on something hard and yelping in pain. I grabbed my foot and rubbed the arch. That's when I saw the thing I had stepped on. It was the rock I had thrown at the fence last night. There was no way that should be here. Nobody would have been able to find that rock. I blindly threw it into the sprawling backyard on the darkest night in months. There should be absolutely no way I could be looking at this rock. Yet, here it was, once again causing injury to my body. "Hello, police department. Anyone here?" It was coming from the front door. I pocketed the rock, stood up, and tried to collect myself. After a few deep breaths, I headed out of the hallway towards the front door. Sure enough, 2 uniformed police officers were standing there. About 10 feet behind them, I saw the neighbor and his wife. He waved. She glared. "Can I help you?" I asked. "We were wondering if you could help us, partner," the taller cop said with a fake smile. "How's that?" Neighbors came out for a walk this morning and saw all the doors and windows open here. Thought that was strange. "Any reason why you did that?" "I didn't," I said. "Is there someone else in the house with you?" He tried to step in, but I shifted my weight in the door frame. He noticed but didn't call it out. His partner, a guy with the body of a former high school fullback, clucked. "Any reason you're blocking the door? Any reason you need to come inside?" I asked. "We're just making sure you're okay," the taller cop said. "I'm fine, thanks." "Neighbor said you got into a scuffle last night." The high school fullback spat. "Who with?" "I don't know. Someone was on the property and I scared them away," I said, looking past the cops at the neighbor. "I'm sure he told you that already. Why didn't you call the police?" "Person was gone and didn't think it mattered. Plus, this ain't your house," the fullback said. "Yes, I'm house sitting. Would you like to see the Tasker app for confirmation?" Before they answered, I pulled out my phone and showed them the details. The short cop ignored it. The tall one didn't. "That seems in order," the taller cop said with another smile. I watched his eyes, and he was looking behind me. "Sure, there isn't anyone else in here. No one I invited. Want us to do a once-over? I'll be okay." "You sure? Not worried about all these windows and doors being open? Anyone could have just walked in and heard you were stolen something." "I'm fine. I just woke up and I'm going to check out the place. If anything seems out of place, I'll be sure to give you guys a call. It'd be no issue for us if we gave the house a once-over. We're here to help." I knew they were trying to get inside the house. My guess was the neighbor's wife had poisoned the well, and the cops were suspicious of me. I didn't feel like getting railroaded by the police today. Unless they could solve a potential ghost issue, their presence here was more a hindrance than a help. "No," I said, "I'm good. I wouldn't mind if we gave it a glance," the short cop said, "to be safe." "Do you have a search warrant?" That changed the tone of the conversation. "We're not accusing you of anything," the taller cop said, "just making sure you're okay. I've told you I'm fine. Is there anything else I can help you with?" The cops shared a look. There was a conversation and a glance. How far are we going to push this to appease some rich neighbor? Finally, the tall cop gave me another store-bought smile and said, "Nope, I think we're done here." I closed the door and let the police go have a chat with the neighbors. I started closing the windows, but lingered a bit to see the interaction. They spoke in stage whispers, and I heard most of the wife's words. She wasn't pleased. She mentioned someone setting off their motion sensors last night and assumed it was me. When she saw the windows and doors, calling the cops was a no-brainer. I moved through rooms in the house, shutting the windows and doors. As I did, I wondered how many different people or ghosts were watching me do so. I'd get another visit from Starsky and Hutch if anything unusual happened near the neighbor's property. I already assumed that I would be getting another visit from one of the 3 ghouls in the backyard. I started thinking that maybe this job wasn't worth the hassle. Then I remembered how much I was being paid and came to my senses. After I closed the house back up, I decided to give Marcia a call. It rang 5 times. She didn't seem to have a voicemail, and I was about to hang up when she answered. "Hello. Hey, it's John from Tasker. How are things at the Shadow?" "Okay. Hey, real quick, have you ever had any strange interactions here? With hobos?" "No, with, like, spirits. I don't really drink. Well, champagne sometimes, but ghosts. Like, ghosts here." Marcia laughed, and I could feel the blood rush to my face. "I can't say that I have, dear. I've had issues with rats." "Are you sure it's not rats?" "Pretty sure," I said. "What's going on? Do I need to return?" No, I've just heard some weird noises in the backyard and in the house, and some windows seem to have opened by themselves. Is that common here?" "Well, I have had some issues with the latches. The house is nearly as old as the good Lord himself." "John," she laughed. I joined in with a laugh so fake yet so convincing it should have come with an Emmy. "It must be faulty latches. I'll double check them," I said. "You haven't gone into the queer house, have you?" "No," I said, taken aback. Good. It's so unstable." "It looks pretty solid," I said, adding, it stood for over 100 years. "Looks can be deceiving," she sighed. "I have to get going. You let me know if any real problems emerge." "Huh?" Before I could say bye, she hung up. I stood there, more confused about everything. I knew I had eyes on me, the living and the dead. Anything I did would be met with some sort of response. But I needed to do something. The figure last night mentioned I would die here. Not exactly a ringing endorsement to stay. That said, I had seen the candle figure after I had thumped my head real good. Maybe I had seen something that wasn't there. Maybe my brain was skipping like a CD player in a jogger's pocket, making some new song from the interruptions. I needed independent confirmation something odd was going on. I wanted to go to the neighbor to see if there was any footage, but I knew I couldn't. If I showed up now, they'd think I was there to exact revenge for them calling the cops. I needed someone who knew something about paranormal stuff. I flipped through my contacts and sighed when I came to the person who could help me, Maggie. Maggie and I had met through a dating app and instantly clicked over text. She was a bit of an eccentric, but we had good chats. She kept me on my toes, and I liked it. Her personality was a bit outside my comfort zone, but I was willing to give it a go if she was. We met up for dinner, which was as awkward as a fart in church. Any magic we had online disappeared like a mirage. In person, while we might not have been a romantic fit, Maggie was still an interesting person. The magic returned when the pressure of being a couple went out the window. We chatted often, and our conversations took wild turns. She was way into paranormal stuff and told me all about the investigations she went on. She posted them to her TikTok and YouTube accounts and had a decent following. I watched a few, and let's just say I wasn't a convert. We drifted when she started dreaming that great harm was going to come to me, and that I should be aware that dark figures were looking for me. That was enough of a jolt for me to maybe wind down the chats with her. At the time, they seemed outlandish, and vaguely like she was threatening me. Eventually, we stopped talking, but now those weird-ass dreams started making sense to me too. I swallowed my pride and sent her a text. Hey, can I ask you a question about the paranormal? My phone rang 2 seconds later. It's happening, isn't it? I don't know, I said. Tell me everything, Maggie said. I did. Over the next 15 minutes, she quizzed me on any number of things. I answered her questions as best as I could. Maggie told me she had a friend who would not only be able to confirm that I wasn't crazy, but also be able to help. I gave her the address and hung up. An hour later, there was a knock on the door. I opened it to reveal the neighbor. He, again, apologized for the cops. I said it was fine, and was about to shut the door on him when he told me he had something I should see. He pulled out his phone and pressed play on a video from his security camera. I shielded my eyes from the sun and squinted to see the black and white video playing. It was from a camera pointed at the fence line. The timestamp in the corner was 2:45 in the morning. At first, nothing happened. I started to move, but he quickly said, just keep watching. I'm glad I did. On screen, I saw the flickering of a candle appear from nowhere. Again, a shadowy figure held it, but I couldn't distinguish any other features. They walked towards the fence, and then disappeared. The video stopped. What happened? I asked. I don't know, but look at this from about 15 minutes later. He hit play, and I heard a loud thump and recognized the noise as the rock I had thrown at the fence last night. Right after, a figure sprinted through the fence. They blurred across the screen until they were gone. I rewound the footage to get a good look at the figure, but it was too blurry to make anything out. What was that? I asked. I don't think it was a thief, he said. It traveled through the fence. What traveled through the fence? I looked up and saw Maggie standing at the door. She gave me a warm smile, and I felt a sense of ease come over me. She could help me. I felt safe with her around, like she was protected against these things. I showed her the video, and she shook her head. Oh yeah, we're dealing with ghosties. I thought you were bringing someone over to check. He's parking the car. Oh, wait, there he is. I peered over her shoulder and saw a lanky man with a long black beard and matching fedora walking over. He wore a duster despite it being 1,000,000 degrees outside. His fingers were covered in rings. He had on several necklaces and a scarf. He looked like he had come in 3rd place in a Johnny Depp look-alike contest. He lumbered over and nodded at me. Greetings, I am Artemistical de la Rouge at your service. I struggled to not roll my eyes. I looked at Maggie and she shrugged. They call him Art. Hi, Art, I said, trying to suppress a giggle. I'm John. Who is this? Maggie asked, nodding at the neighbor. Dave Mitchell, Esquire, he said, shaking her hand. I'm the neighbor. Charmed, Art said, shaking Dave's hand. Should we head inside? Yeah, absolutely, I said, opening the door to invite them in. We got about 3 steps into the foyer before Art came to a halt. Oh, I do not like this. There's something. I need to sit down. Now, I looked over at Maggie, who was worried. I grabbed Art by the arm and led him to a couch. His hand was clammy and there were beads of sweat on his brow. You okay? There is a malevolence here, John. So I've gathered. Do you need anything? Water, Tylenol, proton pack. Water would be amazing. Many thanks, he said with a flourishing hand wave. Many welcomes, I said, walking over to Maggie. Is he okay? I whispered. He's weird, but he's the best. He's in tune with the other side on a level I've never seen before, she said. Is he in tune with our world? She giggled and I remembered how charming I found her laugh. Thanks for reaching out, she said. I know you thought I was crazy. Or something. No, I interrupted. She kept on trucking, but I was worried something might happen. I'm glad you called. I'm glad you answered. One thing, though, she said, biting her bottom lip. I need to document this on TikTok. I'm not supposed to have anyone over here, I said. What if Marcia finds out? Is this 60-year-old lady an avid TikTok user? I sighed. Fine, do your thing. She smiled. I knew I liked you for a reason. Maggie went off to shoot some footage. I grabbed a bottle of water for Art and handed it to him. He nodded and drank down half the bottle in one gulp. He smacked his lips after and smiled. I feel more whole now, thank you. No problem, I said. Did Maggie tell you anything about this place? Oh yes. The spirit filled in the gaps of the story as soon as I entered. I really wanted to roll my eyes, but fought the urge. What did they say? Demons have replaced the true spirits that used to haunt this land. What? Art leaned forward. Sometimes, demons tap into the energy of a location that experienced a traumatic spiritual event. And do what? They take it over. Gonna be honest, Art, my knowledge of demons is limited to The Exorcist. Why would demons do that? Have you ever heard of zombie snails? No, it's a parasitic worm that infects snails and makes them seem alive even when they've died. Birds eat the zombie snails, and the worm lays eggs in the bird's guts. When the bird dispels its excrement, the cycle continues anew. So, you're saying the ghosts here are actually parasitic demons? Yes, he said, and if we're not careful, they can spread. They might have already. He tipped back the bottle and demolished the other half. It was at that instant that I regretted reaching out to Maggie. She swore Art could help, but he seemed as nutty as a Mound's bar. I had to gracefully move away from Art before he started rambling about another insane theory. I glanced back and saw Dave snapping photos of the artwork on the walls. I walked over to him. I'm not sure you should be taking photos of her artwork. I know, but these are treasures, John. Marcia has some amazing taste. Some of these pieces are priceless, Dave said, marveling at the walls. She's never let us in here before, and I can see why. Half of this stuff belongs in a museum. Is it old? I mean, that's an Alfred Jacob Miller painting, so you tell me. Look at the beauty, the scale. My goodness, I don't know who that is. That? Oh my, it is, Dave said, gushing. This one here is a James Walker painting. It's from his Mexican-American War series. He was famous for battle scenes. Oh, the details. I love Western art. Why hasn't Marcia ever told us about these? Did you say the Mexican-American War? Yes, he covered the war for, sweet Lord above, an apparition. Art yelled from the couch. I snapped around, expecting to see the candle figure or the screaming woman, but instead, I saw a shadow on the wall. It was Maggie. She waved to Art to calm him down. I was suddenly feeling less confident in my decisions. I looked at the collection of oddballs I had invited into a house that wasn't mine, and sighed. If Marcia was watching, I knew I'd be screwed. While Marcia didn't have any overt security cameras, that didn't rule out hidden ones. Was she watching me now? I felt like a kid attempting their first shoplift. Frayed nerves, feeling eyes on me, and a guilty pang in the pit of my stomach. Hey, I said, turning to the group, maybe we should. There was a rumble under our feet. Earthquake. It was a roller, which felt like you were standing on a sound wave as it passed under your feet. I braced myself against the wall as the quake roiled. After 30 seconds, the chandeliers were the only things still swaying. You guys okay? I asked. Everyone said yes. I shook my head to try to clear away the cobwebs. I wasn't sure what I should be doing or what was happening. I felt the urge to tell everyone to leave and just go sit alone in the bedroom until Marcia returned. Those thoughts came on as fast as the quake. One second I wondered about the distant noise I was hearing. The next, I was wobbling like a newborn calf. Maybe we should. I never finished my thought. The power in the house flickered and then went out. I was annoyed, but that sometimes happens after a quake. At that moment, all of the shades drew closed by themselves. I don't care how big the earthquake is, that never happens. The house was as dark as it had been the other night. What is that? Dave said. I glanced up and saw a light at the end of the hallway near my bedroom door. It was from a candle that was suspended in the air. Dave dropped the phone from his hand, and the candlelight winked out. Something is in the room, Art said, his voice as panicked as ever. Let's not jump to conclusions, I said. Morira's Acqui, a disembodied voice hissed all around us. I don't speak Spanish, Dave said. What did they say? What did they say? The candle suddenly appeared in front of us. It hovered for a second before it plunged to the floor. When it hit, there was a spark, and it disappeared. But the light wasn't gone. Instead of a candle, the words "You will die here" glowed on the carpet. It flickered like candlelight, and then winked out. You could smell the smoke from the wick. Screw this, Dave yelled, sprinting for the front door. He grabbed the handle and tried to wrench the door open, but it wouldn't budge. He started booting the door and screaming, but nothing happened. He was having a full-blown panic attack, and I feared the contagion would infect us all. Dave, relax. We're gonna be okay, I said, trying to get a hold of the situation. No, we're not, Art said. This isn't a mere specter. This is demonic. Oh my god, Maggie said. As she sidled up to me, she was shaking. I found her hand and gave it a reassuring squeeze. I don't mess with demons, she whispered. We don't know if it's demons, I said. Art stood up and made his way toward me. There is a blackness here. It's enveloping all of us. Don't you feel it? No, I said, but then I felt the bottom of my feet start to tingle. Wait, the bottom of my feet are. Mine too, Maggie whispered. What the hell is going on? It's entering our bodies, Dave said, hyperventilating. It's going to eat our souls. It's getting our attention, Art said. It's got it, Maggie said. There was another rumble, and we braced for an aftershock. But it didn't come. The rumbling was some invisible figure stomping down the hallway toward us. They all huddled together and collectively held our breaths. The smell of death came wafting into our nostrils. Whatever this thing was, it was in dire need of a shower. The unseen creature stopped in front of us and started to growl. Maggie's shaking was worse, but she still managed to record what was happening. I remember thinking, damn, I admire the commitment to the job. The creature roared in front of us, and we felt it. As the peak of the roar, the sound dropped away, and every door that led to the backyard flew open. The dark house was suddenly thrown into blinding daylight. We covered our eyes with our hands, trying to adjust without permanently ruining our vision. I pinched the bridge of my nose, opened my eyes, and let them adjust. Through the haze, I saw a figure standing in the doorway before us. At first, I couldn't make it out, but then I heard her scream and knew who it was. My eyes finally started working again. I saw the screaming figure turn away and run into the backyard. I followed behind it. Maggie, still holding my hand, came with me, followed by Art and then, reluctantly, Dave. I could see the backyard paradise in front of me, but as soon as I crossed the door's threshold, the world outside was replaced with a black that made everything around us disappear. We weren't in the backyard anymore. We were in a void. The only other thing here that we could see was the queer house. I looked back and could see the inside of the big house behind us. It was like we stepped into another dimension. That realization shook me to my core. I felt a sudden need to turn and run back into the big house, back into our world, but the door behind us slammed shut. We were trapped in the void. You're the expert, Art. What do we do? I asked. I don't know. This is. What happened can't. He continued on in that manner for a few seconds before trailing off. Dave was just whimpering. Maggie was silent and recording, but she never let go of my hand. There was a loud clunk behind the front door of the queer house, like a heavy lock had been released. The door slowly swung open, and the squeaking of the hinges dragged on like an ad movie. I thought someone might walk out. Instead, I saw the cloaked figure holding a candle just inside the house. Next to him was the screaming figure. It looked like a woman, but I couldn't be sure. I remember thinking, where was the woman in the white and yellow dress? They're waiting for you, said a familiar voice behind me. I turned around and was stunned to see Marcia standing in the big house's now open doorway. Marcia, I asked, as if my eyes were lying to me. How are you here? Aren't you supposed to be with your mom? My mother died years ago, she said, walking past our group of gawking onlookers. She was murdered and her land stolen from her. What? I said, utterly confused. She grinned at me. There never was a Marcia, John. Zombie snails. Damn, Art was right. As she strode from the big house, the door slammed behind her. I heard dozens of locks snap into place. We were stuck now. This can't be possible, I said. And yet, it is, Marcia said. The years melted off her body with each step she took toward the queer house. She was aging in front of our eyes. Stranger, her whole body changed. Marcia, the older white woman who hired me, was unraveling. Her skin was nothing more than a costume. By the time she stood on the porch of the queer's house, Marcia, as I knew her, was gone. In her place stood a Hispanic woman in her early 20s. Her eyes were red with rage. You're part of the queer family, I said, putting words to all our thoughts. You may have killed our bodies, but you've never been able to destroy our spirit, she hissed. We didn't do anything to you, Dave yelled. No, but you'll pay for what your ancestors did to us just the same. John, what do we do? Maggie whispered into my ear. I didn't have an answer until I felt the rock in my pocket. I wrapped my hand around it and decided I had only one option. I was going to Null and Ryan this thing into Marsha's face. I reared back and hurled the stone as hard as I could. As it left my hand, it felt like the perfect throw. Every mechanic in my arm snapped the way it was supposed to, and the rock felt true as it left my hand. I didn't think it would kill her, but I thought it'd give us time to scramble away. Marsha raised her hand, and the rock stopped midair and fell into the darkness. "That's going to cost you," she said with a grin. "That's going to cost all of you." As she said that, her form changed again. She grew 3 feet in the blink of an eye. Her arms elongated like coils of cable. Those long ropey arms had blades jut out down her limbs like porcupine quills. Her hands ended in sharp, needle-like points. She unhinged her jaw, and the maw dropped 2 feet. Her teeth grew until they were nothing more than 6-inch razors. They were going to die. "If you let me go, I promise I'll give my housekeeper a raise," Dave whimpered. Just then, Art moved in front of us all. Even though he was long and lanky, he looked like a child next to this monster, but his face was resolute and confident. Any doubts he expressed earlier vanished. He looked as transformed as Marsha. "You aren't the queer kin," he bellowed. "The true queer girl has spoken to me. You are nothing more than a parasite, a lapdog of Beelzebub. I call down the power of God above to strike you down where you stand." Nothing happened. Marsha started laughing. It boomed all around us. I squeezed Maggie's hand, and she squeezed back. I wanted to die knowing someone cared about me. I wanted her to know I cared about her, too. Art raised his hands and uttered something in a tongue I didn't know. A shaft of bright white light came crashing down around Marsha like Zeus had tossed a thunderbolt. She screamed in pain. Art turned to us, his face racked in pain concentration, and yelled, "Run!" I looked back and heard the locks on the door back into the big house unlocking. The door swung open, and I locked eyes with the woman in the white and yellow dress. This was the woman who had warned me to leave. This was an actual ghost of the queer family, my savior. The parasite had never been able to catch her. I nodded thanks, and Maggie, Dave, and I rushed through the open door. I turned back and yelled for Art, but he was locked in a struggle with the monster. I heard him scream something else in that native tongue, and there was a blast of white light all around them. I was blown back 3 feet and slammed into the nearby wall. Before I could see what had happened, the door slammed shut. The ground under us roiled again, worse than before. This was a big quake. I scrambled towards Maggie and covered her with my body. The entire house shook for what seemed like an eternity. After a minute, I opened my eyes and saw the devastation all around us. The big house had severe structural damage, and we had to leave before we were buried under the rubble. Before I did, though, I had to look in the backyard. I had to see if Art was okay. I stumbled to the door and whipped it open. Everything looked like it had returned to normal. There was no black void, monsters, or mysterious candlelights, just the sprawling gardens. One thing that had changed, though, the queer house was gone. It was not knocked down or damaged from the quake, but completely removed like it had never been there. Maggie joined me, and we stared at the yard in silence. All around us, emergency vehicles screamed, but in this little oasis, we stayed quiet. After a few, Maggie whispered, "Art, he's not out here." She turned into my shoulder and started to cry. I hugged her and let her sob. I started crying too. This was easily the worst tasker job I've ever taken. I decided at that moment it would also be my last. Dave popped out and saw us. He said he was going to go home and wished me luck. I didn't respond. I heard him shut the front door as he left. We heard another rumble and thought it was another aftershock. It wasn't. The big house, weakened by the quake, collapsed in on itself. Maggie and I dashed deeper into the yard to escape the rubble. We left the property not long after. I never got paid, which shouldn't be a surprise. However, I didn't need the money because I had found a new roommate, Maggie. The trauma of the experience had drawn us closer together, and we both realized that our reunion was something special. She called it fate, and I couldn't disagree. She had converted me, finally. We're going strong to this day, though her paranormal investigations have halted for now. I can't blame her. Art hasn't returned, but we still hold out hope that he will. If nothing else, we owe him our gratitude for saving our lives. I have no clue what happened to him, or what power he called or anything. I'm not sure I want to know. Whoever said ignorance is bliss must have lived through a traumatic experience. Marsha's body was never found. She was one of the countless dead lost to the quake. With no surviving kin, her property is up for sale. In this market, someone will snap it up quickly. I hope they retain nothing from the old house save for the guardian angel that patrols those grounds. Other than her, burn that place to the ground and start fresh. A few days later, Maggie and I were lounging on the couch when she remembered she had taken footage of the whole encounter. She had forgotten she had recorded anything in the hubbub of the quake, the haunting, and our going missing. She pulled up the video files, and every single one was nothing but a silent black screen, except for one. In the last video, right before it ends, there's a crackle and someone whispers a phrase. There's heavy distortion and audio noise, but you can hear a voice speaking. Maggie thinks the person is saying, "Don't forget me. You can get me. I'm not that optimistic." What I hear is something a bit more sinister. "The door is open. We'll get you."